All right, everyone. My name is Pascal Borel, and I'm speaking to you from the Swiss mountains. Inauguration Day in the USA. The strongest economy of the planet is getting a new president. And let me tell you about how I feel about his inauguration speech. It was outstanding. Outstanding. Addressing most of the concerns of most human beings on this planet. And yet, quite often, he stopped reading his teleprompter to give you what he's got in his guts and his heart. And he doesn't fear anything because he's been under attack so much. He grew so strong out of it. He doesn't care about being politically correct. He doesn't care about, all the things that drift us away from common sense. And it is sometimes difficult to hear. I acknowledge that. But at the end of the day, there are no people in the street when the media have warned us for years that if we were to kill wokeism, if we were to say that there are only two genders, male and female, we would go down the drain, that this was the new world that we were living in, and that if we were to take it away, we would strike a revolution and create social chaos. Actually, it's very much the opposite. Brilliant speech of Donald Trump. Although my warning is, will he be like Barack Obama, who gave fabulous speech, although he was reading a teleprompter, he wasn't really speaking from his heart, I trust, and deceive everyone so much. May I remind you that by enriching himself, Barack Obama didn't do much for the US citizens. He even grew one enormous, obscene fortune. He multiplied his assets by factor 100 over a period of a few years. And he was even awarded the Peace Nobel Prize on the specific year. He is the greatest killer. He is the man who directly killed the most human beings, the larger number of human beings, through his war and drone policy. So let's face it, at the time, I was so deceived. I was betrayed, and I felt awful. I trust Trump is of another breed, and he will fulfill his commitment. Best proof of it is that he has signed, I think, in excess of 200 executive orders in order to get rid of the Paris Climate Accord, get rid of the participation of the US to WHO, remind people that there are only two genders on this planet, male and females. And of course, there are sexual particularities, and we all respect them, and voila, it's part of our world. But in terms of gender, it is simple. And he's just calling America to come back to common sense. He's even saying that the taxes, the direct taxes to US citizens, are not constitutional. And he's partly right. How can you accept that the government, for its own survival, robs its own citizens of the value of their hard work? No, 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 no. No, doesn't work that way, you know. And he's coming back to common sense when he calls the Gulf of Mexico to be renamed Gulf of America. Well, if you look at the coastline, and who owns the majority of the coastline, it actually does make a little bit of sense. So, sometimes it's difficult to hear, but at the end of the day, he is probably going to deliver. And that is anything that I can hope for. It's truly a call for optimism, a call to enchantment of every human being living in the US to start working again And knowing that the US citizens won't be stolen by their own government. And, it is something totally new. Let's face it, the US has just a bit below 400 million people. You can call it 350 million or 380 million, depending. And, you know, we are 700 plus millions in Europe. And yet, we, if we were to have the will in Europe to do what Trump is suggesting to the Americans, we would have no one to rely on. Let's face it, our politicians have made us so weak in Europe, and we're not going to be able to recreate this optimism unless we get the inspiration from the US on what to do, on how to behave, and on calling for a major, major, major change in the systems of governance. What Trump is doing is nothing less than killing what doesn't work, or let die, should I say, what doesn't work, for it to reborn, to have a rebirth in a slightly different form, this time in the form of giving back their sovereignty to the people, to the Americans. Trump is a very pragmatic person. He's not only super efficient in what he does, but he's very pragmatic. And he understands that if he puts the tools that will help Americans go back at work to be, in a great wave of optimism, give them the energy at a low price, give them the infrastructure, reduce the legal framework to its strict, you know, usability and no, to the strict necessity, I should call it. Well, he's going to make so much more money doing what is right for Americans, for 100% of the Americans to work, but, favoring the military industrial complex and making sure that only a few people are truly at work and harvesting the value of their work. And if you look at the media at the moment, they go silent. The traditional, I should say, subsidized media are kind of going silent at the moment because there are no one in the street in the US. We've been warned that that was going to be a disaster for weeks, for months, for years. And yet, nothing is happening. Everyone seems to be pretty happy. They understand that hope is now replacing fear. Because the media, let's face it, the way they inform you is they want major disasters. This is how they create the audience. If they are there telling you that everything is hanky-dory and for the better, for tomorrow, for next week, next month, next year, they're not going to get much audience. So they feed on the lies that creates fear in your mind because they know that's the only way to hook you on your television, on your phone, on your screens. But they are lying to you. Trump is a good person. For most, what he has done was to avoid the wars, was to recreate a balance between, foreign countries and the USA, and for the better. So, let me check whether I'm forgetting something. Yeah, the executive orders. Right, I love it. I love it. They got out of the Paris Climate Accord, gone out of most of the burdens that America is, having to cope with over the last few years. He is disallowing by law to change the gender of young adolescents, teenagers, until their majority when they can decide for themselves. And I think that's a good thing. Let's face it. Um, Now, what strikes me as an obscene situation again is the way all the previous politicians, namely Biden, is giving the presidential pardon, in inverted comma, to people like Dr. Fauci, to all the people who deep down in their heart know they have misbehaved so badly and they fear being jailed. And it's crazy that those people ain't going to be made accountable for their actions. They have put at the center of their preoccupation financial interests only. And this is just not on. They should be accountable for that, even if they were under the orders of the previous administration. And you'll see, when we go for a change in Europe, we'll face exactly the same thing. If you believe for 1 minute that your politicians ain't intelligent and are not going to grant themselves the pardon, the immunity that only will give them a chance to survive in their country, in their environment, you misleading yourself. But you should ask yourself the question, why do they need to do that? Like 1, 2, 3, 10 days at the most before the inauguration of a new presidency. It's crazy. So what I'm saying is Trump is calling for action. He's calling for, we're going to make America great again. We're going to make human beings in America great again. We're going to give you the infrastructure that will allow you to work and create value. And this message of hope is valueless. I mean, it has so much value, sorry. It is crazy good. One cannot hope for better. And I'd like to say that in Europe, we are totally incapable of this because we are so brainwashed, we are so weak. We had a few attempts with the yellow jackets in France, like 6 years ago, I trust, to, make things move. But the poor yellow jackets, had to give up because of the state violence, first of all. And then they were bought by the government through what we call a carnet de doléances, where we ask them to put all their, I would say, claims and desires into a file, into a format, so that it could be then implemented by governments. And of course, they're not going to do it. So, despite the fact that the French are people of, they like revolutions, they make revolutions when things are going too far. But at this stage in time, we are so weakened, we cannot do anything. We need to have the current European system die for it to reborn. And as long as we don't do that, as long as we don't have the courage to actually put it down, we're not going to get anywhere. And let's face it, courage is knowing what not to be afraid of. Let me repeat, courage is what not to be afraid of and knowing it. And you have nothing to fear. I mean, no one is going to come and kill you in your place. The only thing you have to do, and sorry to get back on my feet each time I seem to be falling, but please go and look at the roadmap that I have written in my book 2024 on www.forovet24.com. Please do it. It's in podcasts, it's in videos, it's everywhere. And probably that will recreate, your strength. Because let's face it, we were never born as free little mice, as weak little mice. No, we are born as the top predator of the planet, human beings. We are strong. You are very strong. Mother Nature's made you this way. Use this strength to reconquer your life and have a check on my book 2024, because it is clearly a roadmap and probably the fastest way to get back where we all want to be. Well, thank you for your kind and benevolent attention. Peace out.